بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We apologize to you here and to those online that we had this delay of 15 minutes. Those of you who are here know that we had a little bit of rain and we might have a little bit of rain later on, so we delayed it. Now there's no rain. If it does rain, we'll just go inside. I don't know how I'll get inside, but that's what we'll do, inshallah. So this is our third lecture on Al-Imanu Fitra, or Al-Fitra. And the book, Al-Imanu Fitra, is now available. We could only get 64 copies, and there are not a whole lot of them left, but if you want to get them, we also got a really handsome discount. So you'll get it much cheaper here. It's not expensive, but you'll get it much cheaper here than you will online or any other way. So let's begin with a review of the lesson that we had on Saturday. On Saturday we focused on Al-Mithaq. We focused on the great covenant that God gave to all human beings. Alastu bi rabbikum? Am I not your Lord? And we looked at the verses that pertain to that. And then we looked at a number of hadith, and there are a lot of hadith on that. So let's just review some of the important points. I think that will benefit all of us, even those who were here, because we can highlight what's really important about it. And then, of course, many of you are just coming, so it'll give you an idea of what we talked about if you weren't following it online. First of all, this great primordial covenant. On that great primordial day, that's the day of days. That is the core of our sacred history, our understanding of ourselves and the universe and all of time. It's extremely important for us, metaphysically. Theologically, we believe in it, and we affirm it, but it's not a big theological point. But metaphysically, it's a huge point. And of course, for the Sufis, it's an extremely important point, the day of Alastu bi Rabbikum. And we saw that this covenant was unmediated. Okay, that's very important. That means it was direct. You received it directly. It was not given to you through the mediation of a prophet or anything else. We call our intellects Rasul al-Aql. We call the intellect the messenger of the intellect. Because the intellect, when it looks on this world, it will see that this world is finite and the finite points to the infinite. But it wasn't even mediated through the intellect. This came to you absolutely directly in a way that you can't imagine, although you did experience it. So it's right there in the core of your being. And this great primordial day lays down the fitrah. The fitrah is very much completed by that day. Although you already had a fitrah before that, but the fitrah is instilled with these incredible experiences and knowledges and so forth because of that day. So this is your essence, and it's the essence of all humanity. We know from this fitrah that Tawheed, the absolute oneness of God, is inborn in every human being, in every time. People didn't discover it, they didn't make it up. It is a universal legacy. And especially in the context of the verse, it is not the prerogative of the Jews. In fact, we saw in the hadith of the covenant that when Adam sees his children and he sees how beautiful David was, who is extremely beautiful, and he says, "Who is that?" And God says, "He's a man of the last communities." So, and in fact, the Jews are one of the last communities. They're certainly not they're not one of the first. Excuse me. And also it shows that it is something instilled even in the idolatrous Arabs. So they have no excuse for anything else. And we know from this covenant that all human beings share an illustrious beginning. You know, and we say, Al-bidayatu majalatu nihayat. The beginnings are the manifestations of the ends. And we all have incredible beginnings. And all human beings are noble, even the most ignoble of them. But they're ignoble because they violated their nature, not because they were created that way. This is what we believe. And we saw, when we talked about this, that covenants are a very important part of sacred history. And over 18 verses in the Quran talk about covenants. But all the other covenants, the covenants of the prophets, on or just after that primordial day, the covenants with the children of Israel, with Abraham, with Ishmael, with the Jews, with the Christians, and so forth, the covenants with us in particular, all these other covenants are mediated, meaning that they're not direct. They come through a prophet. They come through the means of a prophet. So experientially, they're different. Experientially, they're different. But all other covenants go back to this great covenant. And the prophets, peace be upon them, all came with covenants, or they came to fulfill a covenant, like the covenant of Moses. But in doing that, in bringing these mediated covenants, indirect covenants, or covenants that come through them, then they are doing that to awaken us to the primordial covenant. That's why the basic role of the prophets and the messengers is one of tazkir. It is one of reminding you who you are, and reminding you what you learned, and reminding you what you know. And when we do dhikr, we are remembering what is deep in us. We're not just moving our tongues. And yadhakartu bilisani. But when you mention with your tongue, you're remembering وَهَذَا أَيْضًا ذِكْر and tadhakkur, what is in you. That's why dhikr is also one of the chief means to bring this knowledge out of the primordial self. And that first covenant is written on you. We'll see that even more tonight. Every part of you resonates with this covenant. We could say in modern language, it is stamped on your DNA. It is absolutely at the core of your being. It's even in your fingernails. We saw also, just to remind you of this important point, that all children, no matter who they are, no matter how evil or idolatrous or atheistic their parents may be, if they die before the age of maturity, they will go to paradise. And they will be, in the waiting time, in the hadana, as it's called in hadith, in the nursery of Abraham. And this is very beautiful, because it means they are most worthy of Abraham's company. And as the Quran tells us, إِنَّ أَوْلَى النَّاسِ بِإِبْرَاهِيمَ لَلَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُ وَهَذَا النَّبِيُّ, that the most worthy of people for Abraham are those who follow them and this great prophet and those who are with him. But it means these little children, no matter who they are, they also are worthy of being in his company. And we saw also that these children are described as the most beautiful children the prophet had ever seen. The most and the most beautiful that he'd ever seen. Why are they beautiful? Because their fitrah is beautiful. And they died with that fitrah. Those who die as children then, they die on the first covenant. That's what we say. And those who willfully reject a second covenant, if it comes to them from Noah, or from Abraham, or from any prophet, from our prophet, then they annul their first covenant. So that's really serious. That's very serious. And of course we say willful because the concept of kufr in Islam is that you knowingly reject. Not that you reject because you got a bad account of the religion. Most people, so many people today are horrified by Islam. But this is because of the evil things that have been done in its name. The unjust and brutal and inhumane things that no human being would do. These are the dogs of hell who do that. That's the way the Prophet described them. And, so many Europeans, many Americans, if you hear Islam, they're frightened. Even we have some of our wonderful sisters, from Europe, who are like angels, and the friends of their parents tell them, their parents don't doubt them, but they say, she might go off to join ISIS. I mean, which really hurts her, right? I mean, it's absurd. But this actually makes the judgment easier for those people, because that ugliness removes the hujjah. It removes the proof of God against them. And we don't want to establish proofs against people, but you have to show them that indeed Islam is the truth. You have to answer their questions. You have to give them a good example. And then when people willfully reject, as did Abu Lahab, as did Abu Jahl, then we call them kafir, because they knowingly reject. And we shouldn't apply that word in that sense to people who don't know. They haven't been able to make a choice. But the person who willfully rejects then destroys the benefit of that first covenant. It's still in them though, so they might come back to it. Those people who accept a second covenant or a third, they get the reward of all of them. Who would that be? Well, who else? Some of our other wonderful brothers and sisters. But the Christian who converts to Islam gets the reward of the Christian covenant that you took with Jesus Christ. And then also the one you took with the Prophet Muhammad. So you get two rewards. Don't be jealous. Don't be jealous. And then you have a third covenant. You see, you had your primordial covenant, then you had your Jewish or your Christian covenant, or maybe another covenant, and then you have now your covenant with the messenger. This is very merciful and very beautiful. So then we looked at the hadiths of the primordial covenant, and you remember that there are quite a bit of them, quite a few of them. And all of them, they're not all sahih, but each one of them has, of the different ones we looked at, has a sahih narration. Some of the various narrations may not be sahih, but they're all valid to look at. So one of the things we saw is that one of the things the hadith show us is that the covenant was literal historical fact. It's not a metaphor. Although, again, one of the mercies of Islam is that if you cannot believe that it was a historical fact because your mind can't accept that, then you're allowed to say it's metaphorical. We allow, and that's a mercy of Islam. We're very civilized people. So we believe, just like with the Isra and Mi'raj, if you want to believe it was in spirit or something like that, you're allowed to do that. The vast majority believe it was physical. Okay, and there are many indications that it was. But we're not going to make that a criterion of belief or disbelief. That's a mercy. And it's very important, and probably Sheikh Walid will talk about this when we have our Zawiyah on the Nile. What it is that makes certain aspects of belief obligatory and others are not. So it's not obligatory, to believe that this is literal, but I recommend that you do. And if you have a problem with that, then there's probably a problem in your understanding of the nature of customary experience. And that's okay, we can deal with that. Also, we learn, from the hadith that this covenant was not just an affirmation of Tawheed, but it also was an explicit rejection of shirk. Okay, so therefore it establishes the Hanifiyya, the deen of the Hanif. We also know from these hadith that it is easy for us to keep the covenant. No matter how difficult that may seem, but it comes natural for you and it's easy for you. And here we have the beautiful hadith of Bukhari and others, which I'll just read quickly. Truly God will say to the person of the people of the fire whose punishment is the lightest, ahwan, the least punished in the fire. If you had everything that is in the earth, would you pay it as a ransom to rid yourself of this punishment? The disbeliever will then say, yes. Then God will say, but what I asked of you when you were in the loins of Adam, that's the primordial covenant, was much lighter, ahwan, than this. You see, namely that you not associate anything with me. Yet you refuse to do anything but to associate others with me. Okay, so this is also important, that it's easy to believe. It's easy to be a Muslim. Even though, before you take that step, it seems impossible. The Quran sometimes says of the disbelievers in Mecca, قَلِيلًا مَا تُؤْمِنُونَ, how little it is that you believe. And maybe you understand, as you can understand, that means that you don't believe at all. How little you believe, meaning you don't believe. But actually some commentators say that no, it means exactly what it says. You believe a little bit. You see? قَلِيلًا مَا تُؤْمِنُونَ تُؤْمِنُونَ قَلِيلًا. You see? But you believe a little bit, but you can't go beyond that because of the fact that there are consequences you fear. That if I continue to believe, then what happens to my career? What happens to my job? What happens to my friends? And actually, you'll see this is what happens with people. That when you present the truth to them, they accept it a little bit and then, uh-oh, I've got to get rid of this because it will lead to other things. That's why also one of the great signs of tawfiq is when we have the courage, and it takes courage, to say that I will follow the truth. And of course we want to make it easy for people. Don't make it difficult for them. Don't make it any more difficult than it has to be. Yet in the end, it's easy for us to be ourselves. And to believe is to be yourself. Also we learn from the hadith that God took the primordial covenant not just at a particular time, which is after the creation of Adam. We say immediately after the creation of Adam, after the spirit was put into Adam. But also it was taken in Na'man. Na'man, which is what? Wadi Arafah. Wadi Arafah. And Wadi Arafah is that dry wash, that dry valley that we cross with buses and cars on a long bridge to go from the Haram, which ends at Arafat, to the Hal, which is Arafat. And if you go to pilgrimage, you can almost not miss it. Although usually you have to have somebody point it out because you won't pay attention to it. But that's a big wadi. It's very long and it's very wide. And it's basically the same width everywhere. And all of us were assembled there by the billions. By the billions. That's where it took place. That's why when you make pilgrimage, you're going back to the place you know. And I remember when I made my first pilgrimage in 1973, I really felt that strongly. I know this place. I know these mountains. I know this earth. And I was remembering the words of Malcolm X that Americans have got to know about this place. And I was thinking, we do. We've got to take it to them. I was saying, if only my grandfather could have been here with me. If only my father could be here with me. But, you're going back, Umm al-Qura. You're going back to the mother of all towns, the mother of all cities. So the covenant was taken in Wadi Arafah, just before you get to Arafat. And also, we know that on that day we heard God's eternal speech. Alastu bi rabbikum. And I'm saying that in Arabic. It's revealed in Arabic, but you didn't hear it that way. You heard it as uncreated divine speech, which, if you know the theology or recall it, means it connected you to the infinite knowledge of God. Because God's speech is connected to everything His knowledge is connected to. And what is more beautiful than hearing God speak? So you heard that. And everything you think is beautiful, whether it's a piece of jewelry, whether it's the playing of a flute, whether it's the song of a bird, that's because it reminds you deep down of Alastu bi Rabbikum. It reminds you of that. But we learn from the hadith that you didn't just hear God, you saw Him one-on-one, directly. Yanan aw qibalan, as the hadith says. So you also saw God on that day, as you will in the garden. And that's one of the greatest rewards of the garden, is to see God. Wujuhun yawma idhin nadira ila rabbiha nadira. Faces on that day will be brilliant with light, radiant, looking at their Lord, gazing upon their Lord. How do you do that when He's not a body and He's not limited in time and space? And our theologians talk about that. They say, it's bila kaif, it's without any how. And they say that it's like fana. They don't say that in theology, but that's what we say. They say that if you were asked your name, you wouldn't know what it is. You see Him with the entirety of your being. And when you come back, like baqa, you are filled with a richness that you never had before. And then you'll have it again. And then you'll have it again. Okay, but you had that also on the primordial day. You saw your Lord. So it's the most beautiful thing you ever saw. And this is stamped on your DNA. We know that was alam al-dhar. It's the world of the dhar, which is tiny ants or tiny seeds. You know what dhar means. The tiny ant, or it's a tiny seed. Did you look like an ant? No, you looked like Farida, or you looked like Noor, or you looked like Noshad. That's what you looked like. Or you looked like Arthur. But you were tiny, tiny, tiny. You'd have to look at you with a magnifier. Okay? You had your human form. And you were an insan. And David is called Rajul. You see? And you had what on your forehead? Wabis min an-nur. You had a bariq of light, a radiant beam of light on your forehead. What does that mean? It means your fitrah is so beautiful. That's your fitrah. That's your fitrah. Your fitrah is beautiful. It is radiant. It is perfect. All of us, even Abu Jahl, even Abu Lahab, even Pharaoh, we all had that forehead with the wabis of nur. And we also saw that, as we mentioned a moment ago, in the children in the nursery of Abraham. They are beautiful. Even if maybe, God forbid, they were born in this world, harmed and, lacking something, as some children are. Maybe they died because of that. But in the garden, no, they are beautiful. And all of us will be beautiful in the garden. Every one of us. You're beautiful here. You have that light, that wabis is in you still. But you will be radiant in that world. And of course, there are no old women in paradise. Sorry. No old women in paradise. You'll be a young woman in paradise. And we will be young men also. And then, of course, this is the end of the review, but we had, among the hadith here, we had that beautiful hadith of Ubay ibn Ka'b. And one of the things you see, Ubay, of course, as you know, is one of the scribes of the Quran. He's one of the hafiz of the Quran. Excuse me. And Ubay is one of the ulama of the Sahaba. You see, and this is why when we look at hadith, especially in some schools, like the Maliki school, you pay really, and the Hanafi school, you pay really special attention to the hadith that's transmitted by one of the fuqaha or the ulama of the Sahaba, like Abu Bakr or Umar, or like, for example, Ubay ibn Ka'b. because of their great knowledge, then it's likely that in their transmission they remember more, they get it more exact. So you have to pay close attention to them, and that doesn't discredit Abu Hurairah or anyone else. So when you look at Ubay, you see that he's got so much in that. And he speaks first of all of the two covenants, namely the two unmediated covenants, which is that of Alastu bi Rabbikum, which you and I took. And then he talks about the unmediated covenant that was given to all the prophets after that. Okay, and that's all in the Quran, as you know. And he says there was a general covenant for all the children of Adam, and a special covenant only for the prophets. And then he says that the Adamic covenant had in it three general elements. He doesn't use that language, that's my summary. But first of all, affirmation of Tawheed and repudiation of Shirk. And he says that God says, know that there is no God other than I. So do not associate anything with me. Then also, God promised to send messengers to you. So you know that. It was stamped on you with the primordial covenant. And he says in the hadith, truly I will send, God says, truly I will send my messengers to you, and they will remind you, yudhakirunakum. You see, they will remind you of my pact and my covenant. They'll remind you of what you know deep in yourself. Then number 3, God promises to send down books. So you know they're coming. I will send down my books upon you. And then we also have in this hadith that it was part of the knowledge of God regarding the affirmation they made, which of them would deny it and which of them would keep it truthfully. And then also, in the hadith of Ubay, he adds this really interesting point that among those spirits was Jesus, the son of Mary. That, to me, is just incredible. Beautiful. I mean, of course. But he points it out. Isn't that nice? And for da'wah, that's also useful. Very, very useful. Okay, so that's the review. And now, some of you wonderful, wonderful people have asked very good questions. And so some of you want to know, like, what is the relevance of all of this? Okay. Especially, I'm proud of Egyptians that ask questions like that, because Americans always do. What's the take home? What do we do with this? Okay? And you have to tell them, and you have to be polite, and you have to not get angry. You know, that's one of my problems. Like, what do you mean, what's the relevance of this? You don't get it. But the fact is that it's good to talk about that. That's a very valid question. So, what is the relevance of this? Of course, there's a lot to talk about there, and some of it we have talked about. But one of them is, what does it mean to be human? Okay, and what does it mean to be you? So that's what this is about. And we are teaching you here about the real you. The secret, hidden you. And in that, we're telling you about your potential and the potential of every human being. And rightfully, even the person who asked that good question They talk about how do we do this? How do we get in access to our fitrah? And in times like this, it's difficult in a way because the obstructions are so many. And we live in a society that is becoming as unnatural as it can possibly be. So there are difficulties there, but again, you know, even from these hadith, that if you want to do it, it will be easy. And in order to get us to this stage where we are out of touch with our fitrah, that was the work of generations. And that was hard work. To get you back is very easy. It's sort of like the Muslim conquest of Spain and Portugal. The Muslims conquered Spain and Portugal with a single battle. Only one. Wadi Lucca. And there the Gothic army, which is a German army that ruled Spain, came to meet them. And they knew that they're fighting lions. And they brought gilded cages from Toledo, which was their capital, to put those lions in them and take them back to Toledo. And they were ready to fight. And the Goths know how to fight. Don't you ever think Goths don't know how to fight. They like to fight. And they believe they go to paradise for it. And these were Christian Goths. Arian Goths, by the way. Meaning they had followed the teaching of Arius, of the oneness of God. But that battle went on for 8 days. And nobody knew who was winning. And then on the 8th day, the Muslims took it all. And after that, all of Spain and Portugal welcomed us. It took us about 3 years to go through it to make treaties. It's really interesting. The so-called reconquest of Spain, which is not a reconquest. It is a crusade. It's the beginning of the big crusade movement. That will take hundreds of years. And they will have to fight for every inch. Because Spain and Portugal didn't want this. They wanted their natural religion of Islam. Really, and believe me, it's true. And then even after they conquered Granada in 1492, they're going to have to put in the Inquisition, which is one of the most ugly, abuses of humanity in history against Jews and Christians, because we still wouldn't give it up. Even if you baptize me as Francisco, and even if you spy on me, I'm still going to keep this religion to the extent I can. Muslims did that for over 100 years. That's amazing, isn't it? But this is because it's your fitrah. It's your fitrah, and it's easy to do it. So this fitrah is the root of your hope. This is the root of your aspiration. And to be al-insan al-kamil, or al-mar'atul kamila, this is your only proper aspiration. We have to not be al-insan al-hayawan. And most of us are al-insan al-hayawan. We're human animals. And the animal part of you is very good also, but not if that's all there is. You have to be al-insan al-kamil, al-insana al-kamila. That's what you have to be. That is, and so therefore, you know from this fitrah that you are capable of perfection. Even though you might think, no, not me. Not after all that's happened and all I've done. That's not true. Tawbah can bring you back to this, and it can renew you. And this is not difficult for you. It is easy. You need company. You need proper teaching. So this is the proper human aspiration, to fulfill your fitrah, to keep that trust. Human beings who do not actualize their beautiful and unique, radiant fitrah are less than human. They're less than human. And they will know that someday. And they will reject that. They will regret that. And we can only become perfect through absolute servanthood, through ibadah, through ubudiyah, and through ubudah, which is even higher. For nearness to God only comes through servanthood. And the closer you become to God, who is al-haq, the real,
the more real you become. The closer you come to God, the more real you become. So don't be content to be al-insan al-hayawan. And that's who most of us are, isn't it? We follow our anger, our passions. The most important thing to us is what we eat and drink. You see men divorce their wives in Ramadan because the samoos is not just right. You're insan al-hayawan. You're a hayawan, then, aren't you? This is not the way we're supposed to be. So your highest aspiration then should be and is to perfect yourself, to follow the way of the Prophet. The word Christian originally means to be like Christ. That's originally what it means. You know, Christian is to be like Christ, and we want to be like Christ. We want to be like Moses. We want to be like Jesus. We want to be like Abraham. We want to be like Noah, and we want to be like the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then you're on the path to perfection. You become better every day. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And then we know also that the human being is either everything or nothing. Actually, we can say there's gray, okay? There's something in between. There's actually quite a lot in between, isn't there? But human beings certainly have a spectrum that goes from everything to nothing. And all of that has to do with the way that we treat this trust of our fitrah. Also, another point I'm going to make, and we could make lots of points about this, and it would be good. And this is a very good question that was asked. But you have to know that da'wah, the da'wah that you have, if you know how to give it, it will reach every single heart. Doesn't matter how rich the person is or how poor. It doesn't matter if they're Chinese or Mongolian or African or Eskimo or whatever they may be. This deen is for every human being. And then it's got this incredible law, one of the main principles of which is al-'ada muhakkama, that good cultural conventions have the power of law. So it means if we go to a beautiful people, like the Aborigines of Australia, and a lot of them are coming into Islam. I met a lot of them who have come into Islam. Beautiful people, you know, but we're not going to destroy your tribe. We're not going to destroy your tradition. No, we're going to keep it faithfully, and we as Muslims who are Aborigines, you know, will keep as much of it as we can, as long as it doesn't violate our law. And we will live with you and be friends with you. That's always the way we've been. And you can be sure we were that way with the Native Americans as well, because we got there a long time before Columbus. I have no doubt about that, and I'd love to prove it to you. And so Islam is the master key. It is the master key. You've got the key to all hearts. And I remember once studying a book I taught comparative religion for 16 years. And I remember once I looked at these different books on comparative religion. And I remember looking at one, I could even tell you which one it is. But this book talks so beautifully about Judaism and about primitive religion and, you know, about Christianity and about Hinduism, Buddhism, and so forth. And Islam is, well, you know, we got to talk about it, right? It is a world religion. And you think, like, who would ever be this? Even for the picture of Islam, they show a sand dune with an old sheikh sitting on the sand dune with a tablet teaching a boy the Quran. And it's like, these are primitive, backward people, right? They're Bedouins, as if we didn't have civilization, and as if Bedouins don't have civilization. You know, and then I just thought, wait a minute, historically, Islam converted every one of those religions, every single one of them, by their own voluntary choice. We never forced any of them to become Muslims. We converted millions of Buddhists and Hindus and Jews and Christians, especially Christians. Christians have no immunity from Islam. Believe me, they don't. They're the fastest to convert. The only people historically who have converted faster than Muslims are Zoroastrians and Magians. Magians and Zoroastrians. You see? So Taoists, Confucianists, communists, atheists, it doesn't make any difference. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله. He, God, no one else, is the one who sent his messenger with guidance and the religion of truth to render it uppermost over all religion. And that historically has been the name of the game. And we don't have time to elaborate on that. But, this is because they all have the fitrah, and you've got the deen of the fitrah. So this is kind of relevant. Don't you think so? Okay, so let's begin our lesson for tonight. And alhamdulillah, the book is here. Is it sold out? Almost. Going once, going twice. All right, so we've got our book tonight. And what we want to look at first tonight is pages 129 to 148. And so what we're going to talk about is a reference to that. And you can read it later. But this is what we're going to talk about first of all. So this is the beautiful verse. Really beautiful verse. Sibghat Allah. Sibghat Allahi wa man ahsanu min Allahi sibghatan wa nahnu lahu abidun. Okay, this is such a beautiful verse. So, this verse can be translated. Let me see, where's my translation of it? Okay. I can't find right now. I moved my stuff around, so I don't know where I buried the translation. Oh, here it is. Okay, so this is the translation of one translator. The baptism of God. And who is better than God in baptism? And they put baptism with a capital B, the baptism of God with a capital B, and the other one with a lowercase b. The baptism of God. And who is better than God in baptism? And we are worshippers of Him. So you could also translate this as the coloring of God, or the dyeing, like the dyeing of a cloth, of God. Sabagha means to dye. Literally, sabagha means to immerse. It means ghamasa, sabagha. It means to, and when they would dye, they would immerse the cloth in the dye. They probably still do it. Okay, so sabagha means to immerse, but we use it then in Arabic to dye, because when you dye cloth, you immerse it in the dye. And you'll see that the Christian and Jewish concepts of baptism, they are all based on immersion. And the word baptismos in Greek, which is where we get baptism from, means immersion. It means sabagha. It means sibra. So it's the immersion of God, the baptism of God, the dyeing of God, the coloring of God. And sabra means to dye because you plunge the cloth into the liquid, the color. And more generally, it means to cause something to enter into something else, like the color to go into the cloth. The baptism of God here, Sibghat Allah, is something, it means the creed of Abraham. So, and it's in Nasb, Sibghat Allah, not Sibghatullah. So that means follow the baptism of God. Adhere to the baptism of God. And many commentators say, this baptism with a capital B is the primordial nature, the fitrah of human beings, which they carry within themselves in the same way a cloth bears its original color. And when did you get dyed? On that day. when God manifested himself to you, and you heard his pre-eternal word, and you saw him, you were dyed forever in every single molecule of you with this fitrah. So it's an extremely beautiful metaphor for the fitrah. And again, it means like everything else, that this fitrah is absolutely you. It's not 30% in you and 100 in you. It's not 50% in you and a larger percent in another. It's not like 10% in Abu Jahl. That's why he was so bad. And in you, it's 100%. No, it's 100% in everybody. Everybody. It's stamped on you. Okay? So, this beautiful verse is often related to other verses, especially to 2:135. And this verse is 2:138. It's in Surah Al-Baqarah, and it's verse 138. And so it's usually, is it raining? The baptism of God. Okay, we're going to get immersed, right? Oh my goodness. What are we going to do? It's raining. Shall we tolerate it? As long as Maimuna can take it. Okay, if this computer gets wet, there's no Dr. Umar, okay? I'm closed down, I'm out of business. So maybe you can give me an umbrella, you know? But how can I read it if you cover it? You don't read it. Here we can do like this, okay? We do it like this, okay? That's not going to work either, is it? Okay, so, anyway, let's cover the keyboard, okay? And the rest of the computer, just don't worry, I'll take care of you, I promise, okay? So they relate it also to verse 135, which is, and they say, be Jews or Christians, and you shall be rightly guided. Say, rather, ours is the creed of Abraham, a Hanif, one who turned away from falsehood to truth. And he was not one of the idolaters. So that shows that Sibghatullah is Dinu Ibrahim. And it is also a Dinul Hanif. Thank you. You see these incredible people here? And I get to keep this forever, right? Okay, so it refers to that, you know, and so this is a response to the Jews and the Christians. Thus, the response is, tell the Jews and Christians that they should instead follow the baptism of Abraham. It is the baptism of God. It is the best baptism. It is the fitrah. It is the fitrah. 100%. It is the Hanifiyya, the Deen Hanif. Qatada, who's one of the great successors, as you know, and a great commentator of the Quran, he says that the Jews baptize their children as Jews. Is that true? Did Jews baptize their children? Well, if you've been listening well, you know the answer. Yes. The Jews baptized just like the Christians, not in the same way, but baptism is part of Judaism, just as baptism is part of Christianity. Christians get it from the children of Israel. They were also children of Israel. John the Baptist, when he was dunking people in the Jordan River, was doing baptism. Okay, and he was a Jew, by the way. And he was doing what Jews do. And they do it for Tawbah. And they do it to clean their sins. And they do it also for conversion, because if you're going to convert, you have to be baptized. Christians do that, and Jews do that too. At least they used to. So Qatada knew what he was talking about. And, you know, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Never forget that, dear brothers and sisters. And especially if you want to know the depth and richness of this religion, you've really got to do a lot of study. You know, you read something like, they didn't kill him or crucify him, but it was only made so to appear. And you say like, oh, I'm kind of embarrassed to read that to a Christian. They all believe he was crucified. Yeah, they do, all now, but they didn't 2,000 years ago. or 1,900 years ago, or 1,800 years ago. Because in that time, many of them, if not most, believed that he was not crucified because he was the Messiah. And the Messiah cannot be crucified. If the Messiah is crucified, he's not the Messiah. He's not the Christ. That's the name of the game. That's what it is. That's why the Jews know that if he was crucified, he's not the Messiah. You cannot crucify the Messiah. And Jerome says that the blood of Christ, believing that Christ had been crucified, had not dried in the earth of Judea, which is Jerusalem, but that there were people saying, it's not him. But shubbiha lana, it looks like him. And those people were called docetics, from the Greek word dokein, which means shubbiha. So you've got an incredible revelation. And you're going to see, even in this verse, the use of the words is perfect. Because Sibra is the only word that every Jew and Christian and non-Jews will accept. Whereas Ma'mudiyya or Ta'mid is, the Jews use it too, and and the Arabs were saying Ma'mudiyya. Ta'mid. But they didn't know. They got it from the Syriac speakers. In Arabic, it wouldn't be Ta'mid. It would be what? Taghmid, with a ghain. Because in these other languages, they lose the ghain. You see? So they don't say Sibra, they say Sab'a. They make it into ayn. Okay? But, so Qatada says then that the Christians baptize their children as Christians. And we talk about that in the book, by the way. I go into 10 pages on that, on baptism, which we're not going to go into tonight, although I'm going to give you a little bit, so maybe you'll read it if you want to. You don't have to. But Islam is the baptism of God, Qatada says. And it is the best of all baptisms, for it is the deen of God and of Noah and of all prophets and messengers that followed. Very beautiful. Many commentators hold then that Sibrat Allahi is a reference to the fitrah. Thus, the verse may be regarded as one of the many proof texts, nusus, that establish clearly the greatness and the nobility of the fitrah. For the verse does not come by itself, but in conjunction with many other verses in hadith that bear that out fully. And it has to be read in that context. What does Sibrat Allahi mean? So, Sibrat Allah is a metaphor, right? And it is a tamthil, it is a tashbih. And that's why there are differences of opinion about what it means. But many of the commentators, many of the great commentators in particular, they hold that Sibrat Allahi is a metaphor for Fitrat Allahi allati fatara an-nasa alayha. It is this primordial nature of God. And of God, we can't say it that way in English, can we? Because then we think, oh, God has a primordial nature. No, but it means that just like Baytullah, God has a house? No. Sayfullah, God has a sword? No, but Khalid ibn al-Walid is his sword. And so it means that the sword of God is a great sword. And the house of Allah is a great house. And it means the fitrah of Allah is a great fitrah that is praiseworthy. And we would never say that the fitrah of a cat is fitrah of Allah. It's not. We'll see why. And Sibrat Allah is the same thing. That this is the Sibra of Allah, just like Baytullah, just like the fitrah of Allah. So it's very, very special. That's why it's associated with God. Okay? This fitrah has been likened to the dyeing of cloth, because when cloth is beautifully dyed, it becomes an ornament on the one who wears it. And this fitrah is an ornament. Okay? It is also said that it is a metaphor for Iman. And there's nothing wrong with that, because Iman is stamped upon you, dyed in you. It is also to say that if the iman of the people of the book comes about through the baptism of men, which is mediated, then the iman of the Muslims comes about through the baptism of God, which is not mediated, which is direct, like alastu bi rabbikum, that takes place by means of the fitrah, and that then is fulfilled by the means of prophetic guidance. So, and then again, in the book from pages 135 to 145, take a look at it. You know, I want to show off, you know, pray that I don't have riyah or anything like that. But, you know, here I use Semitic linguistics. And Semitic linguistics, again, you don't have to study Semitic linguistics, but some ulama have got to study it. See? And we used to do things like that. But today it's like, you know, we're really in a bad state, to tell you the truth. We have some great scholars, indeed we do. You know, but, you know, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the most incredible find, archaeological find in the 20th century and the 19th century, and maybe ever. How many Muslims have studied them? Oh, there's one who studied them in translation. Maybe you could count me too. Okay? Is there any of us who actually looked at the manuscripts? No. Any of us who could understand them? No. This is where we are. You know? That the nations will pounce upon you like people pouncing on a platter of food. They said, well, that would be because we're so few in that time. No, antum kathir. You will be kathir. لَكِنَّكُمْ غُثَاء كَغُثَاءِ السَّيْلِ. And I'm not addressing that to you because you're not that way. But it means that you will be, astaghfirullah, scum. Like the scum washed away on the surface of the water from rain. And astaghfirullah, we are in the period of Ghutha'iyah. That's the period we're living in right now. The period of Ghutha'iyah. We're so lazy. We are so negligent. We don't study. You know, and that can't be the way forward. And you're capable of study. We've got to study. And that means some of us have got to study linguistics. I have a student, I won't name his name, he'd be embarrassed. He's studying Thamudic. He's studying the language of Thamud, which is written all over the Arabian desert. And it even says Thamud. And it's ancient Semitic. And now, and I help him with that, by the way. I studied it myself. And I even showed him an article that argues that Thamudic inscriptions evolved from the rock paintings of Arabia, which go back to 7000 BC. Which means that Thamudic would be the first script. And we say that Phoenician, Lebanese, is where we get our alphabet. No, Phoenician's like around 1200 BC. This would be thousands of years before that. And Thamudic is like Phoenician. Phoenician comes from it, and these other languages we've got to study. So I talk about the word sabagha here, and I think you'll find that interesting. You know, that's 10 pages. By the way, there are misprints on page 136 and 138. And if you've got the book, maybe you might take a note of that, because the editor mistakenly turned the ayn into a ghain. If you look at it, I'm saying that sabagha in the northern Semitic languages is the same as saba'a, because they lose the ghain. I wrote that in it, but he is correcting it. Oh, he made a mistake. He left the dot off the ayn. So it's like, like you're not reading, are you? And the same mistake is on page 138, the fourth line from the bottom. That should be saba'a, not sabagha. But you'll see here that the Qur'an's picking the word sibra. Had the Qur'an used the word ta'mid or ma'mudiyya, which the Arabs were using, by the way, but then it would be using a word they took from Syriac and a word that is not linguistically authentic. Whereas sabagha and sibra is. And you may not understand what I'm getting at. If you read it, if you have patience to read it, you might. And I've got a lot of Semitic languages in here, even Babylonian. You know, so these are things we have to do. I happen to love stuff like that, you know, and I know some of you, and this is a fard kifaya. It's not something you have to do, but enough of us have to do it. And we have a brother right now doing it. You cannot leave anything to others to do. You've got somebody among us. Many have got to study the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here in Egypt, you had the incredible discovery around the time of the Dead Sea Scrolls of the manuscripts of Najah Hammadi. Najah Hammadi. Those are also incredible. They are ancient Christian texts, mostly from Gnostics. And just like the Dead Sea Scrolls, were buried away for 50 years. And only a few Jews and Catholics could look at them. The same thing was done with the manuscripts of Najah Hammadi. And did we say anything? We had no idea, and we didn't care really. We're not into that, you know. This is pitiful, really pitiful. We've got to study history, we've got to study language, and then you see what happens. You'll see how great your religion is, how incredibly great it is. So here we see that there is incredible historical linguistic accuracy in the expression Sibghatullah. It's really amazing. And that Sibra is the broader, more ancient, and more accurate word, rather than Ma'mudiyya or Ta'mid. And a lot of Arabs didn't know that, by the way. Even Ibn Ashur, who is one of the great commentators of the 20th century, he didn't know that. He said, Mattala'tu alayh, which is being honest. He's a great man. Allah have mercy on him. He died the same year as the great Sheikh Muhammad Abu Zahra. Sheikh Muhammad Abu Zahra was a great man, really he was. We'll suffice with that. Okay, so let's go on now to another verse, and this would be on pages 118 to 128. I'm jumping all over. Okay, and so what we're trying to do here really is to give you the essence, you know, of what is here. And if you read it, I hope you benefit, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And if you find mistakes, you tell me. Please tell me. There are editorial mistakes, by the way. There are not many, but there are a few. So here we want the beautiful verse, which we all know. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونَ. That's a Fitra text. And that is Surah At-Teen, as you know, which is 95, verses 4 through 6. Truly we created man in the most beautiful stature. This is one translation. Taqweem is really hard to translate, isn't it? But stature is part of it because he's qa'im, you see? And he's looking in front or up. He's not like animals looking down on the ground. That's one of the meanings of it. So he's standing up. It's a stature, but it's also a stature that stands erect. So truly we created man, which is the human being, man and woman, in the most beautiful stature. Then we cast him down to the lowest of the low. Save those who believe and perform righteous deeds, for theirs shall be a reward unceasing. Okay, so this is of course in a response to the oaths. وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ وَطُورِ سِينِينَ وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ. How many oaths do you have there? And oaths are always by things that are precious and sacred and great. Shams will come up, right? But also oaths mean that what is said is absolutely, literally true. That's very important. That what is said is absolutely, literally true. It's not metaphorical. Okay, now that's very important here. Because all human beings are created in the best of forms. All of them have this perfect fitrah. You know, like, I don't know if our sister's here tonight who asked about scientific proof. I don't see her. She's not here tonight, God bless her. She asked a very good question. But if you talk about scientific proof, well, most people might say that I think human beings are the worst thing on earth. We have many people who are misanthropic, right? They don't like men. They don't like human beings because they're pretty bad, right? And God on the day of judgment is filled with wrath because of the idiocies and crimes that we have done for thousands of years. So you're telling me that people like the ones who are massacring people in Syria at this moment, or letting people be killed and died in the Yemen, or who are treating the Rohingya like scorpions and snakes because that's what their Buddhist teachers tell them. They say the Rohingya are not human beings, they're scorpions and snakes who have been transformed in this life into human beings. So if you kill them, it's actually good. Astaghfirullah. If you rape their women, it's actually like a qurba. So over 60% of their women have been multiply raped. That's the truth, as ugly as it is to say. So the people who do that, they're also made in ahsan taqweem. I beg to differ. No, you can't. وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ وَطُورِ سِينِينَ وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ, which are all sacred religious places, aren't they? It's really, you've got to understand the depth of this. The depth of this. So it means, no, this is true, even though you may not believe it. Even though you may be inclined to believe it. You might say, I have that fitrah. Me, who've got all my problems and issues. No, you do too. You were created with ahsan al-taqweem also. So the oaths are emphatic affirmations of humanity's exalted status, even though they don't live that way. But they're created that way. And this is why the angels were ordered to prostrate themselves to Adam. You know, and that's many times in the Quran, as you know. It's because of your taqweem. That's why your father, Adam, God said to the angels, prostrate yourself to him. Man here, al-insan means all humanity. All males, all females, all believers, all disbelievers. No exceptions. Again, taqweem is a difficult word. I mean, and the Quran picks the most incredible words, doesn't it? You know that. You who are Arabs, and especially Egyptians. Egyptians have the gift of eloquence. I think you get it from the Nile. I don't know where you get it from, but maybe the Nile. The Nile is one of the rivers of paradise. Did you know that? Of course you did. And the Euphrates is too. Iraqis can be pretty eloquent. But they say that means that in Ethiopia there is a spring that is from paradise. And that spring flows into the Nile. And the same thing's true of the Euphrates. It has a spring that flows into the Euphrates. But, so when you Egyptians read the Quran, and all Arabs are like this, but I know Egyptians really have a gift. And you see like incredible words, incredible expressions, aren't they? So taqweem is stature. It is a verbal noun from qawwama, which means to raise, to shape, to form, to make, to stand up, to arrange. Here it indicates that man, the human being, has been given proportion and beautiful harmony and balance. And he and she are able to stand upright, to put their heads up in the heavens. This is indicated by the fact that we stand erect, with our faces looking forward, not stooped down. And most animals, their faces are stooped down, right? That is symbolically significant. It's not by chance. Of course, they have to eat grass and they have to hunt and things like that, but it's a symbolic truth, an archetypical truth. This beautiful stature is not just a reference to the physical form, although the physical form of the human being is beautiful. But because that physical form, the khalq, is a reflection of your inner form, which is what? Khuluq. You have your khalq, you're beautiful. You look at the mirror, you be thankful. God made you beautiful. Okay, but inside you have a khuluq that is even more beautiful than that. Your character. And you want to keep it that way, don't you? Human beings are the best of God's creation, both outwardly and inwardly. Human beings manifest the attributes of God and the names of God. And this is also their taqweem. See, that's also in taqweem. That your taqweem is also that you have life, you have knowledge, you have will, you have power, you have speech, you have hearing, you have seeing. Those are as-sifat al-rabbaniyah. Those are the lordly attributes of God. You share those names with Him. Those are His primary attributes, aren't they? Life, knowledge, will, power, speech, hearing, and seeing. You have those too. That's your taqweem. And then all the names of God. Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Malik, Al-Quddus, Al-Salam, Al-Mu'min, Al-Muhaymin, Al-Aziz, Al-Jabbar. They're also in you. They're also in you. That's taqweem. No other creature has that. Every other creature has a bit of it. You've got it all. You've got the plant kingdom in you, the mineral kingdom in you, the animal kingdom in you, the angelic realm. It's all in you. You know, so you're really important. And you've got a job to do. And so do I. And we can only do that together. Okay? So ahsan taqweem means also the highest degree of istiqamah. It means all the things we said, but it also means you were given the highest degree of istiqamah, of uprightness, and of salama, soundness. You see, and it's like this is what the commentators do based on hadith, based on Quran and other things, so that we put the fitrah together. And when we end the class tomorrow, at the end we want to look at all the incredible things that we can remember about this fitrah. So God gave you this istiqamah, so there's no original sin. Nothing like that. And the worst of us was created mustaqim. The worst of us was created salim. Also, we look at the language, and again, you Arabs are good at this. You really are, and cultivate that. Cultivate that. You have so many gifts. You do. And even your Ammiya in Egypt, and I would say the Ammiya of other Arabs are like that too, that it's got all kinds of subtleties that enable you to appreciate Fusha as well, right? Doesn't it do that? So here we have fi, the harf fi. So the expression fi in fi ahsani taqweem is a little bit rare. It's special because we would expect bi or li. You see? So why is it fi? That's unusual. Okay, and the Quran does that all the time. Pay attention to the huruf. Pay attention to the prepositions. So this fi indicates quwwat al-mulabasa. It indicates that you are absolutely muqawwam. Absolutely. Quwwat al-mulabasa. It's not like 30%. It's 100%. And it goes to your very root and core. So this beautiful fitrah then is absolutely in you. And every part of you, even your fingernails. Fi also indicates tamakkun. You know that this thing is absolutely in charge of you. It's in control of you. It also indicates milk. That you control it, you own it. It owns you. Yamlikuk. It's your malaka. It's your instinct, your natural instinct. It's as if God had said, we created the human being بِتَقْوِيمٍ مَكِينٍ هُوَ أَحْسَنُ تَقْوِيمٍ. We created the human being with an absolutely established, affirmed taqweem, which is the best of all. Nothing better than that. In this respect, the fi is like harf ala, that we had فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها. لماذا عليها? That's unusual too. We talked about that before. You see, but as we said, ala means you're absolutely on that fitrah. You're not like partially on it, partially off. It didn't miss you and hit others. No, you're on it too. And so is the sister sitting next to you. And so is the brother sitting next to you. You're ala, and it's also fi. So these prepositions are part of the balagha of the Quran, the i'jaz of the Quran. All of this indicates that if human beings, and this is important, isn't it? If human beings acted consistently with their natures and were free of negative outside, external influences, all they do would be perfect. Everything they do would be characterized by the highest degree of istiqamah, uprightness, and salama, and soundness. Okay, and they talk about nurture and nature. Well, we're on the nature side, except you have a good nature. And nurture is what changes it. And also what's not nurture, like the intervention of Satan and other things like that. Also, brothers and sisters, this taqweem is unique to you. You know that everything God does is perfectly done, but no other creature shares your taqweem. God's taqweem, His perfect creation of the human being, is one of His great signs in creation. You're an ayah of ayatillah. Probably some of you are named Ayah. I know one of you, but I can't see her right now. Egyptians love ayah, don't they? And ayat. And that's a beautiful name. You are an ayah. Whether it's your name or not, you are an ayah. So this indicates that you are one of the greatest signs of God in creation. This is why there's a heaven. This is why there's a hell. If you do what you're supposed to do, the only place you can belong is the garden. And if you turn your back on what you were created to do, you're the king who refused to wear the crown. You're the queen who refused to rule. And you're a good queen. You're a good king. And you let the evil king rule. And you decide, no, I can't wear this crown. No, I'm sorry. It's on your head whether you like it or not. You know, you've got to wear it. And if you turn your back on that, you know, then you're in trouble. You're in trouble. So these verses also indicate that God's taqweem of the human being is something unique to us. Birds are beautiful, aren't they? And you have lots of hudhuds here, and I love hudhuds. I don't know why. I do all my life. Hudhuds make me happy. They always do. I remember one day in Granada, I was so sad, sitting on Monte by myself. This brother knows what I'm talking about. And just thinking like, you fool, you've ruined your life. You've done so many stupid things, which is true. And I was all alone. I had nobody. Everybody left me, meaning my wife. She'd gone back home. She came back later on, you know. But she said, like, I followed you long enough. You know, I'm going home. And I'm sitting there by myself, you know, and really, really feeling bad. And a beautiful hudhud flew up. Oh, I feel so. And then the mother flew up behind him. And then a baby. I said, okay, ready to go. Okay? So, you know, birds have a beautiful fitrah, but yours is unique to you and to all human beings. It's not shared by anything else. The creature who comes closest to it is the jinn. But they don't have everything you have. So these verses also indicate that your fitrah is unique to you as a human being. No other created being shares it with us. This taqweem takes in our outward and inward
forms.
Oh. Part of this is the complete compatibility, tawafuq, between our outward reality and our inward reality. So here we talk about, commentators talk about two fundamental distinctions of this unique human being. So let's talk about those. We can do that in 10 minutes, and maybe we've got some time to spare. So you are unique because you have two fundamental distinctions. First of all, one, you are a totality. You are a little universe. You are complete. And the world is not complete without you or the likes of you. Adam is the completion of the world. The world is incomplete without Adam. And you are the daughter of Adam, or the son of Adam. So you are a totality. All other creatures, even jinn, are parts of the whole. But you are the whole. That's why we call you the little world, or the little man. And we call that the big man, or the big world. Microcosm, macrocosm. We manifest all of God's attributes. You manifest all of God's names. That we do differently. The way you do that's not the way that she does it. That's why you are unique. As a human being, you're unique. But as an individual, you're also unique. Because you manifest those attributes and names differently. That's why you have a special role to play. You can do something I can't do. You can do something I can't do. We complement each other. Okay, number two. All other created beings have fixed courses and fixed stations. Okay? Maqamun ma'loom. Okay? I'm trying to type this in. And alhamdulillah, we didn't have to use this, right? Maimun is happy. All right? So, everything else has a fixed station. Cats are cats. Dogs are dogs. Especially if you deal with dogs that are bred. They have very, very predictable natures because they're bred for that. You know, maybe they're bred to hunt wolves. Well, they can do it. Or they're bred to hunt badgers. They can do it. Or they're bred to herd sheep. They can do it. But they have maqamun ma'loom. And the angels have maqam ma'loom. The angel never goes against its nature, does it? Never. But what is your maqam? That's your problem. Is it going to be high? Because it can be higher than the heavens. Is it going to be low? Because it can be lower than the seventh earth. We could be asfal safilin, right? So where is your maqam? This is also a special distinction. Animals, plants, trees, they never swerve from their station. A cat's got to be a cat. You know, every animal's like that. But not you. You can be 1,000 things, 1,000 times 1,000 things. So what are you going to be? فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ? Where are you going? These courses for animals and plants and other things are defined by the limited attributes they manifest. If we look at these beautiful plants in this incredible blessed garden, the name that stands out here, one of them is Ar-Razaq. In every plant, you see the stamped on them is Ar-Razaq, because plants give us provision. They give us wood. They give us leaves. They give us fruit. They give us oxygen. Everything about them is rizq. Isn't it? Even if the leaves were to fall to the ground, they nourish the earth. They give us shade. The birds can make nests there. They change the climate. Okay, they're all rizq. So Razak, that's what's stamped on the tree. And it has other names too, but it has limited names. You've got also Ar-Razak in you, but you've got also many other names. Human beings have no fixed station, since they manifest the whole. That's your totality. You manifest the whole, the totality. Everything is in you. The heavens and the earth are in you. It's hard to believe, isn't it? Maybe it's hard to understand, but it's true. It's true. That's why we say our lower body from the navel down is the earth, and our upper body from the navel up is the heavens. And you don't have to believe that, but I think it's true. And you don't have to believe it, but all that's out there is in you. There are more brain cells in your brain than there are stars in heaven. How many of them are lit up? Probably not even 2%. 2%. Your brain is much bigger than anything that you use. The whole is strictly indefinable. You can't define the whole. And you can't be defined either. Since there is no one thing that it can be identified with. You're amazing, you see. There's no one thing you can be identified with. Hence, in contrast to other created things, human beings are mysteries. You have a sir. You are mysteries. Your ultimate station is unknown. And when God created you, He gave you choice. He gave you free will, even though He knows what you're going to do. But His knowing it doesn't make you do it. And He created for you a beautiful place in the garden. And He created for us an ugly place in the fire. Okay? And when you go to the grave, and may we all be felicitous, if you are Sa'id or Sa'ida, then you will be shown your place in the fire. No, you'll be shown your place in the fire. This is where you would have gone. And it will be deep in the fire because you are great. You see, why didn't you do what you were supposed to do? How could you turn your back on it? And then He will show you your place in the garden, high in the garden, inshallah. And the disbeliever, when he goes into the grave, he is shown, first of all, his place in the garden. This is where you could have gone. You made the choices. God did not make you be what you were, and you know that. You know it from the time that you were a young boy, when you began to do things you knew were wrong. In the beginning it hurt you, and after that it didn't hurt. And you turned your back on yourself, and you know that. And you became jealous of your brother. You became this way or that way. So they're shown, first of all, their place in the garden. And then, but this is your place in the fire. This is what you chose. This is what you chose for yourself. Therefore, human beings must undergo a process whereby they become what they are to be. So process here is very important. And again, our sister or brother who asked the question about relevance that we talked about in the beginning, a process is part of that too. What is the process? And part of that process is to learn the truth. To learn the basic knowledge, which is not difficult. To keep good company. Company that raises you up and that enlightens you and makes you yourself. So we have to undergo a process whereby we become what we are supposed to be, or what we are, what we're meant to be. The possibilities of any given animal are broadly defined by its species. Cats. You know, I met in South Africa Tiger Man. He's a Muslim now, by the way. You can find him on the internet. He's an Afrikaner. He's tough. And he trains tigers and lions. If you want, you can look at Tiger Man. You can see him put his face in the tiger's mouth. And I said, I respect that. And I said, what do you have to know about tigers and lions? He said, you've got to respect them. Okay, but he said, I would never train ever, and none of us will ever train a leopard. Why? Because it's a pure cat. Just like your house cat is a pure cat. And therefore you don't know what it's going to do. But he said the lion and the tiger, they're a little bit different in that species, you see. So they're not pure cats, that's what he said. And therefore, you've got to be careful, because they are cats. But they've got enough of a difference in them that you can actually train them. But you've got to be really good to them. And you've got to respect them. So he's a Muslim now. Maybe he can train us. The possibilities of a given animal then are defined by their species. The possibilities of the human being are defined precisely by your indefinability. You cannot be defined. You cannot be defined. You are undefinable. You're going to define yourself. And may you do the best job of it possible. And this is what we have to work on together. We've got to grow together. How is time? Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're going to come back to this tomorrow, inshallah. And I think, hopefully, we will have enough time, to get through the next lecture. And anyway, thank you so much for coming. Now what we want to do is to open up for questions, right? Thank you, thank you, thank you. How are you doing? You should come here and help me answer. You should come here and help me answer. Most human beings do not remember the covenant with God. You said, are there people who do remember the covenant with God? And the answer is yes. Yes. Al-Junayd al-Salik used to say, I remember who was on my right hand and my left hand. I know a man who's now passed, and he's a Sharif, Hassani Sharif Jilani Sharif. He is actually the grandfather of my first grandson and first granddaughter. They're Jilanis by Nasab. And he was a great man, really beautiful man. And he used to tell me, I probably shouldn't say this, but he said, I remember our making tawaf around the throne together. He used to say that. I'm sorry that I've said it, the kind of things one shouldn't say. But he remembered that. And I believe him, absolutely. I believe him, absolutely. So there are people who know that, and you yourself don't quite remember it, but then again you do. Because you see people that you know from the time you see them. You see, so you met them there, and you're remembering them from there. And you know that's happened to you many times. It happens to me. It happens to you, doesn't it? And I've seen people that, I know you. And he'll say, no, we're meeting for the first time. And I really don't believe it. Okay, so that's also part of that. And there are other secrets there as well, that we won't talk about now because that would be off the subject. But the more that you get intact with your fitrah, the more you become balanced, the more amazing the things will be that you will remember. Why would God create people for the hellfire? Well, first of all, God, that language is used in the hadith we talked about last time. These I created for the garden. These I created for the fire. So that language is there. It's kind of harsh language, isn't it? And it's God's right to use it. He's the Lord. And those are that's words of majesty. That He is Jaleel. He's also Jameel. He created people for the garden and for the fire. And He knows where they will go. But He doesn't make any of them go there. That's the important thing. He knows what you will do, but He doesn't make you do it. And how do we explain that? Well, that's a that is a theological lesson. And we talk about that in theology in detail. And basically what we want to do in theology is to give you the language and the cognitive frames so you can hold to this and talk about it intelligently. Will you understand it at the first level? No. But you've got to believe it. As you grow spiritually, you will understand it. You will. It's not it is beyond logic or reason when they're not enlightened. But it is not but beyond logic and intellect when they're enlightened. Okay? It's not beyond the man or woman who has lived completely for God, so that God loves them and then becomes the eye with which they see, the ear with which they hear, the heart with which they think, the tongue with which they talk, the foot with which they walk, the hand with which they grasp. They know it. They understand it. And you can understand it too. Why is there heaven and why is there hell? Well, this is a big question. And in theology, we don't talk about it because it's metaphysical. It has to do with haqa'iq. And theology doesn't talk about haqa'iq. Theology talks about things that everybody can understand. Haqa'iq, which are metaphysical truths, let me give you one just for an example. Number stands outside of matter. I love that. Number, al-adad, stands outside of madda, matter. That is really big. And that is actually one of the things that's said by our teachers, but also that St. St. Thomas Aquinas emphasizes. If Descartes, if Leibniz, if Kant, if Hume, if the early modern philosophers and everybody who came under them had only understood that, they wouldn't have made the mistakes they made, and they made some big ones. Descartes is brilliant, yes, but he made some big mistakes. And so that means that number is not quantity. Number is quality. Number is symbolic. Okay, so these haqa'iq, they really are beautiful. They are intoxicating. Most people can't understand them. But we can tell it to you in poetry. We can tell it to you in music and song. That's what Rumi will do. That's what Ibn Farid will do. That's what others will do. But the haqa'iq are beyond most people to grasp. And art is the language of truth. Beauty is the splendor of truth. So art, in architecture, in clothing, in music, in design, it is to prepare us to understand these truths. And you see that in the great Islamic architecture wherever it was. But actually the answers to this question are in what we talked about tonight. That you are unique. You are undefinable. You are a little universe. And therefore, you can do what no one else can do. You can save the kingdom. Okay, no one else can do that. You have a crown, you've got to put it on. You're a queen, you've got a crown, you've got to put it on. And when you put it on, you can turn things around. And the outer state of this world, even the extinction of species, even the pollution of the environment, it reflects how inhuman we have become. We turned on our natures and therefore we destroy creation. If we turn back to our natures, we will restore creation. We will restore each other. And that's why the good people who do that, when God sorts it out in the end, He puts them all in the garden. That's the place they belong. They earned it. And He created it. And it has in it what no eye has seen, no ear has heard, and has never occurred to the heart of a human being. But that garden, and I hope this doesn't confuse anybody, in all of its beauty, is the outward corollary, the outward manifestation of your inwardness. You know, if you were the only one in this world, in all of your goodness, all of your purity, we would be walking on pearls and not on sand. Believe me. We would be walking on pearls and not on sand. But this world's got to be mixed. It can't be like that. And the fire, God created it, and in it too is what no eye has seen and no ear has heard and has never occurred to the human being. But it is the outward corollary of the inward reality of those miserable people, like the butchers of Syria, or the butchers of Yemen, or the butchers of the Rohingya, or of the Chechens, the butchers of the Chechens, or the butchers of the Bosnians, and go on, the Palestinians and others, right? Right? Like, what kind of people are these? You know, I was born on April 11th, 1948. On that day when I was born, the Israelis came into Deir Yassin, a beautiful village that never did anything wrong, and massacred every man and woman and child to terrorize the Palestinian people. Okay? What kind of people do that? What kind of people do that? Okay, those are dogs of hell. See, so there has to be a place for them. And then there are a lot of other secrets there. And in fact, you see, on the day of judgment, you discover who you are. And alhamdulillah, you've got to discover it here first and work for it. You don't want to discover it there. But they all discover who they were. And they say, if only I were dust. Ya laytani kuntu turaba. If only I were dust. If only I were not a human being. It also means if only I were dead. Because you're not. You're going to live forever. But you're going to live here. And you know that when they are judged and damned, they are relieved, believe it or not. And when they go into Jahannam, which is the top of hell, you know, and then they go down, every step is so bad that what was before it seems like heaven. And as they go down, they are relieved. Because it's like, this is what I deserve. This is what I earned. When I killed the children, when I massacred the women, when I took the Syrian woman and threw her off the top of the building because she wore a hijab. Okay, I deserve this. What about the man who killed his child, or who molested children, or did these other bestial acts? Okay, so we ask God to forgive us. But there is great wisdom in this. And part of that is because you are not like anything else. You're not a cat. You may wish someday that you were, but you can't be one. And God, Al-Ilah, He does everything as it's supposed to be. Al-Ilah makes cats cats, the way cats are supposed to be. He makes dogs dogs, the way they're supposed to be. And He makes you the way you're supposed to be. And the Rabb, which is the same thing, but the Rabb is the one who commands you and is guiding you to where is your maqam. Where is your maqam? And I will give you everything you need. I will give you everything you need. And I will command you. And what I command you is wise and good. And I will prohibit you. And please don't do it. It's not good for you to do it. And I will show you mercy. And I will send you books. So, you know, you are not just the human story. You are the story of the universe. And there's got to be heaven. There's got to be hell. And they go on forever. And there are lots of things we could talk about there, which, you know, probably is not appropriate to talk about now. But one of them is that the reality of all possibility. God knows every possibility there is. In the world of possible existence, which is this world that we're in, God's will makes you who you are by selecting out of infinite possibilities all the possibilities that are you. How many other possibilities were there instead? Infinite times infinite times infinite. And all of those infinite possibilities will play out over infinite time. But in this world you have good and evil. In the next you have heaven and hell. And there is no evil anymore. Although there are evil people who will be the denizens of hell. So these are things I probably shouldn't have even mentioned. It's way over my head. Probably not over yours, but it's over mine. But you've got to believe in these things. Heaven and hell are not child's tales that we try to tell people so they'll be good boys and girls. The people who are going to be bad boys and girls don't believe in it anyway, do they? You know, and the believer is the one that يعني هم من عذاب ربهم مشفقون إن عذاب ربهم غير مأمون. They're the ones who are mushfiqun. You, and I hope I myself, if you don't fear God, you don't know Him, because He's majestic. He doesn't owe anything to me. I owe everything to Him. I've got no guarantee. Okay, so I should fear Him. As Umar used to say, if I knew that everyone was going to paradise but one, I would fear that I'm that one. If I knew that everyone was, going, if I knew that only one person was going to hell, I would fear that I am him. If I knew that everyone's going to the garden but one, I fear I'm the one that's left out. Okay, that's what an incredible person he was. What a brilliant person he was. How are we doing this time? It's up. But the questions, they're not up. But most of the questions are about that issue, by the way. And we'll look at them. Sidi Hisham will help me. Right? Yep.
Sorry, Sidi, we have 15 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Dun, 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 dun. I'm still on the spot, electric chair. 15 minutes, okay. Why are some people inclined to do bad and others to do good if everyone's fitrah is the same in essence? So, brothers and sisters, again, God bless you and God bless me. But, the more and more we learn, the more and more we have to be really careful about the words we pick. Okay, so, and this is one of the essence of Islam. We are careful speakers. And look at your great ulama, how carefully they speak. Okay, and you want to be that way too. We define everything, even though you can't be defined, but we do. We define time, we define space, we define the world. Okay? We are a people of definitions and precise language. Precise language. Today we live in the reign of the plastic words. Did you know that? And there's a great book written about that, The Reign of the Plastic Words. By Uwe, which is a German name, Uwe, U-W-E. What's his last name? I think it's Perksen. Perksen. He's got like a Danish name, but it's Perksen. It's something P-O-E-R-K-S-E-N. And he's got a book called The Plastic Words. That's great. Great. It's really great. And he says, we live in Lego land. All of our words today are Legos. You can combine them any way you want. You can play with them as much as you want. And Legos are good for children, but Lego words are not good for you as an adult. You want words that are fixed and clear. One of the greatnesses of the French language, and many of you know French very well, French is precise. And, I love the English language, but French is more precise than English. French is very exact. And may it stay that way. But we also want our language, Arabic, English, German, French, Spanish, to be right on. We want to get beyond the plastic words. So why are some people inclined to do bad? Well, who said they were inclined to do bad? You did. I never said that, did I? And that's okay. But, when you pick that word, you've got to think, is this the right word? Because it's not. They're not inclined to do bad. They're all inclined to do good. Therefore, they do bad by their choice. And they're also influenced by circumstances, demonic and human and otherwise. Okay, but that's their choice. نُوَلِّهِمْ مَا تَوَلَّوْا. We turn them to what they turned themselves to. So we don't agree. They're not inclined to do bad. If fitras are similar, how do we understand that some people have more spiritual capacity, isti'dad, than others? That's good. That's a very good question. It's all good questions. It's just that one word, inclined, shouldn't be used. Okay, but that's true. We have different isti'dadat. We have different preparations. So this man is a musician. Okay, his isti'dad it includes musical genius. Okay, he's got it. Some of you have an isti'dad for mathematics. One of the great mathematicians, who is Gauss, is a German mathematician, in the 18th century. His father was a professor of advanced mathematics at Göttingen University in Germany, and his father would put him on his lap while he graded papers, graduate papers in mathematics. By the time that Friedrich Gauss was 7 years old, he began to correct his father. He becomes one of the greatest mathematicians ever, who, by the way, objected to introducing the infinite set into mathematics, because that harms mathematics. He talks about that a lot. But so Gauss has an incredible isti'dad for mathematics. As we all have different isti'dadat. That's because your fitrah is structured differently. It's all the same. It's the same building blocks. Okay? It's the same names of God. It's the same attributes, but you are unique. You are a unique configuration of that fitrah. But I don't have something you don't have. You don't have something that I don't have. It's just in you, something is prominent that is not prominent in me. Okay, and this is why we complement each other. And it's true, some of us have an incredible spiritual isti'dad. Others of us don't. But we are all spiritual. And we're all capable of incredible spiritual attainment. It's just for some people, like me, that's slow. Because I don't have that spiritual isti'dad. I have to work on it. I am basically very materialistic. I'm a person who loves law. That was my love. Sharia, usul al-fiqh, that was my love. I didn't care anything about the Sufis. I became a Muslim in 1970, but the only thing I was concerned with then really was law, fiqh. And I was concerned about politics also. And usul al-fiqh. That was for the first 12 years. And then I thought that you need something more. And then I discovered the spiritual path. And even then, it's like, I've got to be taught. I've got to be told. Okay, because that's not really my inclination. Really, it's not. I'm very much concerned. I love history and things like that. Okay? So some of you have spiritual isti'dad from the beginning. From the very beginning. How do we come to terms with the idea that there is a part of humanity that will be damned to hellfire? With the idea that each human being has the potential to reconnect with their fitrah? Is there a problem with this still? So there shouldn't be, right? And first of all, they're not damned now. The damnation's on the Day of Judgment. Okay? Right now, they're making choices. And God is Maliku Yawmiddin. Or Maliku Yawmiddin. Maliki Yawmiddin. Maliki Yawmiddin. And when we say Maliki Yawmiddin, which is what we say when we recite Hafs, which most of us recite, that is Ismul Fa'il. It's an active, what do we say? Active participle? I don't know. But when you put Ismul Fa'il with Ma'rifah, Ad-Din is Ma'rifah, it's got the definite article, it means always. Ghafiru Dhanb is the same thing. Ismul Fa'il, Ghafir, with Adh-Dhanb. So it means he's always forgiving them. Qabil at-Tawb means always accepting Tawbah. That's the beauty of the Arabic language. So Maliki Yawmiddin means God is always the King of the Day of Judgment. Even right now. Even at this moment. He is presiding as Maliki Yawmiddin. Meaning that right now he is judging you. So you have beautiful thoughts. You have a good opinion. So he will reward you for that. And give you better thoughts. Or maybe I have jealous thoughts. Or maybe I have dark thoughts. Or maybe I'm looking at something I shouldn't be looking at. So he may judge me and he may forgive me. And the judgment would be, then I will turn you to that thing. And I will deny you access, and your heart will become hard. Okay, so God is you're never free of Him ever. He's always watching over you, and we have to, part of our aqidah is to believe in al-adhab wal-thawab. Al-thawab wal-iqab. Okay, not just in the garden, right now. Right now you're getting thawab. Of course, thawab that you'll get on the Day of Judgment. But you're also getting thawab in that He's opening your heart. He is too kareem to wait till the Day of Judgment. So He's going to give you something in advance. Or, if I'm going to be really bad and jealous and backbiting, then He may judge me and throw me off the track forever, or for 7 years, or for 5 years. Okay? So He doesn't damn us, we damn ourselves. You know, and that's why Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, may God be pleased with him, he used to say, never regard any sin to be so little that you don't have to care about it, because it might be the one that breaks the camel's back. You don't know. Okay? Be careful about everything you do. Live with muraqabah. Be aware of God. Adam sinned, so his progeny sinned. How can we make sure to expound upon this without understanding it as an Islamic version of original sin? Okay, well, first of all, it's not. Because original sin means his sin became theirs. Not that he sinned, so they sinned. No, that's not what original sin is. Original sin is that Adam sinned, and that made you mu'bad. That made you crooked until Jesus Christ comes and dies for your sins. That's a strange teaching, brothers and sisters. And that's not the teaching of Jesus Christ. That is not the teaching of Jesus Christ. And it's not the teaching of the early church either. But we all sin. And we sin because Adam sinned. Now, how do we understand that? It's difficult. In theology, we have a number of difficult issues, because they are min asrar al-qadr. They are secrets of destiny. One of those is free will and predestination. Okay, we talked about that a little bit. God knows everything you're going to do, and He willed it, and He has power over it, but you also willed it, you also have power over it. So you must believe that you're making the choices. And you must believe that He knows what choice you're going to make. But He doesn't make you make that choice. His knowledge is not like mine. My knowledge is always past tense. Okay? So if I imagine God having knowledge like mine, then for Him to know what I'm going to do means He's going to make me do it. But His knowledge is not like that. His knowledge is not His will. He doesn't will that you disobey or disbelieve or go to hell, in the sense that He makes you do it. Okay? But, so free will is difficult. Yeah, it's the most difficult thing. And that's why most people get it wrong. Jews, Christians, Muslims, everybody else. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. This looks serious. But the thing is that the infallibility of the prophets, time is up. Okay? I've got books to save. I've got a computer to save. Okay? Okay, take it to shelter. Save Maimuna. Okay? Infallibility of the prophets is one of the secrets of God. And we can talk about it tomorrow, maybe. Okay? But it's like qadr, that it's difficult. It's difficult to work out. But maybe we can come back to it tomorrow. God bless you. Allahumma wafiqna. The rain's coming down. May God accept the dua. Allahumma wafiqna lima tuhibbuhu tarda. Waja'alna min abidika su'ada. Wa amitna ala kalimati al-huda. علمنا ما ينفعنا ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم يا رب العالمين اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. I'm going to run, okay? And I'll see you in a few minutes.